To our friends on the East Coast, good afternoon. To our friends on the West Coast, and good in-between time. To our friends in the in-between spaces, welcome to the Social Justice Power Hour. Welcome to the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice virtual headquarters. My name is Robert Sather-Schreiber, and I'm your host this evening, as I have been for over 175 other Power Hours thus far, and we'll have 175 more. We'll be here in virtual community for as long as we have you with us, and thank you for joining us. So thrilled tonight to have Noah Changa with us. Noah Changa is an electoral justice reporter, the absolutely ideal person to be with us on this fraught evening, to bring us into tomorrow's fraught events, whatever they may be. No one better than a Noah who can encourage us, inform us, enlighten us, and inspire us. So we're going to have a great conversation this evening, and thank you all for joining us for it. And remember, as always, please do feel to shout out your comments in the comment section, to ask questions, to give snaps, whatever else it may be. If you have concerns, express them. If you want to know more, share with us. If you have a story, share with us. It's a community building conversation, so please do join us. Before we start our conversation tonight, I do want to tell you what else is coming up, because we have you covered this election week. On the other side of tomorrow, because there's going to be another side of tomorrow, whether it is a bold, brave new direction or a catastrophic cataclysm, we're going to need more community. And I'm thrilled to announce that we're going to bring to you Adam Gopnik on Wednesday night, who is the author of 1,000 Small Sanities, who's been with us once before. We had a tremendous conversation, and he's going to be a wonderful guest for the day after election to lead us into whatever it is we may need to be led into. And then following that, on Thursday night, we're going to have Jonathan Alter with us, MSNBC correspondent, incredible journalist, author of 2 of the most pivotal books on Obama, and this new book on Jimmy Carter called Jimmy Carter, His Very Best, A Life, with that great cover by Andy Warhol. So we're looking forward to having that conversation with the incredible Jonathan Alter. And then tomorrow night, to give you a chance to breathe, both literally and figuratively, we'll bring you queer yoga, as we do every Tuesday night. After you vote, after you've encouraged your friends, your family, and your enemies to vote, because everybody needs to vote, you're going to have a chance to relax before we look at whatever results may or may not be coming in. And then finally, we're going to end the week with an incredible concert by renowned folk artist David Brzezinski, Blues from the Porch, with a special guest, Guy DeRosa, harmonica player. So Friday night, we'll be able to either have a celebratory concert or a little bit of a dirge. Either way, David Brzezinski will bring us into the weekend beautifully. That's what we have coming up this week, and coming up in the near future. Just solidified this today. Very excited to announce that we're going to bring Patton Oswalt to all y'all. You all know Patton Oswalt, and he's been incredibly fierce this election season with bringing his voice and amplifying others. So we're very excited to bring him to the Power Hour. Monique Morris is going to be with us. The founder of the Black Girl Freedom Fund is going to be with us. Michael Ian Black, comedian, author, actor, director, Renaissance man, author of this great book, A Better Man, A Mostly Serious Letter to My Son. Very excited about this conversation. Pete Souza is going to be with us. Can't wait for this. You know, he was the official White House photographer under Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama. He's going to bring some of his favorite photos to us and discuss them and give us the personal behind-the-scenes skinny on all those. Franklin Leonard's going to be with us, the creator of The Blacklist, wonderful author of The Culture Warlords, My Journey into the Dark Web of White Supremacy. Talia Levin is going to be with us. And finally, just booked again, the author of Evil Geniuses, The Unmaking of America, Kurt Anderson, is going to join us again at the Power Hour to lead us into, again, whatever we may need to be led into. So after this week of special election week coverage, we're going to have some incredibly inspirational guests to share with you, to share our beloved community. So please join us each weeknight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. But nothing compares to tonight. Nothing compares, as Prince would say. Anoa Changa is with us, who will lead us into this evening and tomorrow. So without further ado, let's bring to our virtual stage. Anoa Changa is an electoral justice reporter whose passion lies in building collaborative political spaces that fundamentally change the way communities and grassroots organizations engage with the social and political systems around us. She is a movement journalist, deeply influenced by grassroots-led electoral organizing efforts. Anoa is also the host of the podcast The Way with Anoa, tackling politics and current events through a Black progressive feminist perspective. And without further ado, someone who I am a huge fan of personally and professionally, and honored that she could be with us tonight. Welcome to our virtual stage, Anoa Changa, everybody. Anoa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Let me see. Hold on for 1 second. Make sure. Hello?
Yes.
Does that work?
That works beautifully.
Awesome. Hi.
Hey, friend, how are you?
I am tired, but again, it is a blessing to be here with you this evening. So I'm good.
That makes me I'm so honored. I know, I hope that folks know your dance card tonight is full. I am sure you got invitations from all over the place. You are the person to talk to tonight for so many reasons. Electoral justice, obviously, but also Georgia is a huge, huge conversational point right now, and you are the person literally on the ground. So there's so much I want to cover. I feel like I'm going to ask you one question, put myself in the corner, and be done for the night, and just listen to you. But thank you.
You asked the perfect questions to set me up for the conversation, so let's get to it.
You're too good to me. So my first question is this. In a broader context, in a really general sense, what have we missed this election cycle? What's the one story, the one thing that nobody's seen that should have been talked about more, that should have had more focus?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that there has been there's been amazing organizing happening in rural communities across the country, really, but definitely here in Georgia. I just finished talking with a colleague of mine yesterday about some of the organizing happening down in Middle Georgia in the southwestern part of the state. We hear some conversation when there are issues, like when there are long lines and people are waiting upwards of several hours or even a full work shift to vote. Or back in 2018, we heard about Randolph County, which is in southwestern Georgia, when they were trying to close all but 2 polling locations of predominantly Black county. We rarely hear the stories, though, of the victories, of the successes, of the work that people are putting in, and how folks are engaging and building on the trusted relationships they already have in community to help turn out vote. We're seeing record turnout, not just here in Georgia, but literally across the entire country. We saw, really amazing turnout despite the pandemic in the primary season, despite all the challenges and issues, that were happening. And we're seeing that same turnout so far in vote by mail and early voting happening so far. So I really think what we're missing often are these stories that are like more about who is doing the work and how it's happening and why they're doing the work. So that's something that I think is missing from the conversation about like what is really happening on the ground in Georgia in terms of the work folks are doing to expand. In Gwinnett County, it's really been great to see some of the AAPI folks that I know. And AAPI, I hate when we group AAPI voters sometimes because Asian American Pacific Islander voters is such a large set of countries, nationalities, origins. There's some amazing organizing that's been happening. Some Indian American colleagues I've seen, they've been having like chai and chai chats and like really building into culture, right? So I think more stories about how people are authentically leveraging culture to reach their communities and engage them about why this election is important, but not just this election, like how do we build power collectively, and what does it look like to flex that muscle this cycle?
See, that's what I love about the positivity that you exude is such a wonderful thing. And it must be difficult sometimes, though, because you are faced with so much negativity from the press, as you just said. And and that's what I thought the answer may be. Would orbit around that would be that there's so much attention not paid to the community itself, and they're looking for the negative aspects. They're looking for the problems and not looking for how folks are trying to resolve it and how they actually are resolving it. So I thank you and that's so much what I want you to bring to us tonight, because I know that our community is so desperate, and for good reason, to hear about what's actually happening. And it's so much of it is positive. So much is positive. And as we come to this end point, we're looking at a lot more positivity than negativity. So tell us about Georgia. Tell us what's going to happen in Georgia. Give me your crystal ball of what you see happening tomorrow, and then maybe, obviously it's not all going to happen tomorrow, or we're not all going to know about it all tomorrow, and it may be actually months, right?
Right. Well, I mean, the one thing here in Georgia that we know for certain is that we will have at least one runoff in a Senate race. We have 2 Senate races, so we have 2 Senate seats. So folks keep talking about the folks wanting to flip the Senate. We have 2 of those seats right here up for grabs at the same time in Georgia. There's a special election to fill the seat of former Senator Johnny Isakson, Kelly Loeffler, which folks may have seen the news coverage, particularly around her, with the insider trading, allegations, as well as this summer with WNBA players, particularly the ones from Atlanta but elsewhere, protesting her openly and even wearing shirts supporting Raphael Warnock, who is the lead reverend for Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is Martin Luther King's church here in Atlanta, and is basically the lead down in the race, in that special election race. It's what they call a jungle primary. So it's an all-in, everybody, regardless of party, competing for this one seat. It's about 20 people are in that race, and that is most definitely going to a runoff because of the sheer volume of folks, right? So that election, I think, is in early January, the runoff election for that Senate seat, and that person would fill out the remainder of Isakson's term, and they would have to run for re-election, I believe, in 2022. We then have the Purdue race, which is David Perdue and Jon Ossoff. So that's another Senate seat that's up for re-election. And depending upon how they shake it out, some people are saying that may actually go. There is also Libertarian in that race. So that may actually go to a runoff, depending upon how the vote share falls ultimately. But what we're looking at in Georgia, I think, are some opportunities in terms of some state house races. There are plenty of state level races happening. I mean, state house and Senate are up for re-election. We're also looking at, some local elections. There are some sheriff's races here in the metro Atlanta area and some other areas, some DA races. One of the things that's really interesting about sheriff's races in particular, when you have people who are running for sheriff who are committed to certain policies, right? Like, for example, 287G is a program that is super crucial at the county level in particular. You have offices that will enter 287G agreements with ICE, and that has to do with detention and deportation of undocumented folks. And what we know from these types of programs, it exposes undocumented members of our community unnecessarily to increase policing. There's a hyper focus. Like, conservatives will try to say, like, oh, we're only going after people who are dangerous criminals or whatever. But we know that oftentimes folks get snagged in these programs for simple, really minor issues that are not dangerous threats or anything. And I would submit that even someone who's allegedly dangerous, I mean, what does it really mean to be dangerous? Allegedly, protesters from this summer are dangerous, but people stopping highway traffic and driving cars off and buses off of roads aren't considered dangerous, right? So who's considered dangerous is also very dependent upon who is doing the interpretation. But this program, 287G, when we look at some of the data that's come out, Gwinnett County, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta, part of the Atlanta metro area, accounted a couple years ago for 20% of the detentions under this program nationwide. So this one county accounted for a fifth of the 287G detentions nationwide, right? That county has a sheriff that's up for re-election. And it's these sheriffs, these county commissioners in some areas that are involved in entering these agreements. So having someone who has the politics to say, hey, this is a bad policy, we don't want to cooperate against our community in this way, goes such a long way. Cobb County, which is another suburban county right outside the city of Atlanta proper, is another county that has such a sheriff's race happening as well. So we see some really important opportunities to shift. There have been, I think the other story that is here in Georgia is building on the foundation that Stacey Abrams and her campaign built in 2018 in terms of expanding the electorate and engaging and talking to everyone, right? Because we recognize that our coalition is young folks, is people of color, is women under a certain age, unmarried women, LGBTQ folks, it's progressive white people. Like, we understand AAPI voters, Latino voters, Black voters. We know we have this expansive coalition and really reaching and touching people, connecting them up on the issues. And another thing that I think is really important for states like Georgia that have not expanded Medicaid, we don't have Medicaid expansion here in Georgia, and with the potential threat of gutting or eroding the ACA, it would put our communities here in even more dire risk, right? Like, our governor and with the Trump administration just passed a grant for Medicaid waivers, which may sound good on its face, but it's actually spending, from some of the reports, some of the nonpartisan budget reports, it's spending more money to cover fewer people, and it's not the same level of effectiveness instead of just expanding Medicaid under the ACA, right? We would still get I think we're still at the point where we could get a 90% match for Medicaid expansion right now, and the state would only have to cover like 10%. So there are some real opportunities here to not just win seats and move things in this particular 2020 election year, but really building on the foundation set in 2018, looking forward to 2019. We have municipal races happening all over the state. And then 2022, we have our statewide races, such as governor, secretary of state, labor commissioner, lieutenant governor, et cetera.
So that's why I was so thrilled for so many reasons that you'd be here, because overall, electoral justice is such a pivotal part of what we're looking at nationwide. But Georgia is truly a microcosm. And because of everything you just mentioned, it's almost like you couldn't write the plot more perfectly with everything going on in your state. So first of all, speaking of writing, there's a book here, and I hope that you should write it. No one else should write it. You should write it. There's a book that after this election, like on Wednesday, you have to sit down and say, how do I make this a book? Because I will publish it. I'll personally publish it. There is so much here that is the story of 2020, that is the story of the national general election right there. You're talking about down ballot. You're talking about looking at every race, looking at every person. You're talking about, independent spoilers. Why is Lieberman, what is up with with Lieberman's in elections, and why can't they ever just do the right thing? Say again, I'm sorry?
Like father, like son.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And at some point, doesn't someone say to me, what? Your best bet is this, or this is how you look like a good guy. I just don't understand. There's so much to understand about the folks doing the wrong things. How, one, they don't see it, or two, they don't have someone in their camp that says to them, hey, you know what? For the greater good. And it'll make you look better. Doesn't that make you crazy sometimes? Because there's nothing but people shooting themselves in the foot right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The issue with Matt Lieberman too is like several people, including one or two former staffers, when information came out about the book that he wrote in 2018, people were like, you need to drop out. Like, this is horrible. Like, you just need to drop out. Like, it doesn't even make any sense to continue going on. And he has doubled down, dug in. And it's going to be really interesting to see how things shake out after tomorrow. But when just thinking about like what's happening here in Georgia, I've had this conversation with several folks, and Georgia is a microcosm for a lot of the issues we see across the country, but so is the organizing. There are these organizing networks. I don't think people understand this, right? Like how interconnected some of the organizing is across, different states and different regions. I'm actually sad because of the pandemic, because ordinarily you'd have something like Net Roots or something where like everyone comes together and talks about their work, and or people who haven't seen each other in a long time meet up. When last year I did some work for the New Georgia Project, and I'm just walking around with the head of New Georgia Project and say Kufa, and she's introducing me to the head of 1PA, which is another capacity building organization based in Pennsylvania, and they're old friends that go way back when. And then, INSE and other folks are friends with folks in Ohio with the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. And then you have people in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. I mean, like, there's this like amazing network of folks who get it, right? They've been doing this work. It's been getting more attention the past few years, but they've been doing this work for well over a decade now in terms of how do we re-engage communities that are often taken for granted and just assumed to vote for a particular party in a particular way. And we're really seeing, as we're having this demographic shift in America, as we're seeing, states like Georgia, which is on track to being the first non-white majority state later on this decade, right? So we're looking at another like 6 years or so, Georgia shifting to be a non-white majority state. It'll be the first in the Southeast, but you also have similar population shifts happening in the Southwest. We've already seen that happening in places like California. I mean, and what does it mean to really tap into this and really like build with people? So not looking at folks, to paraphrase Princess Haney, who is the co-director of the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, so to paraphrase, so to not look at people as a voting block to activate for an election, but to look at people as actually folks in community to build and help them practice, understand what does it mean to participate in democracy. Because part of why we're in this moment we're in right now, part of what has been missing is that learning, that process, that practice of democracy. I recently, actually today, I had a piece come out in Truth Out, just profiling Ohio Organizing Collaborative and their style of relational organizing. It's something that Princess really said sticks with me about how, in decades past, our foreparents, really learned the art of practicing and engaging in democracy, whether it's through social clubs or through participation in organizations like the NAACP. Not that people still aren't participating in these organizations, but labor unions. There's so many different ways that in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s that folks really engaged in the practice of democracy. And unfortunately, that fell off after a while. And now we're seeing this reemergence of that organizing, of that prioritizing of what does it look like to build democracy as a practice, as a culture, into our daily lives and routines. And I know for so many of us, I'm a single mom. I've been raising kids my entire adult life. I had my daughter when I was in college, so I understand the challenges a lot of us have in managing, our time and the different demands on our lives. But we do have to find a way to have civics, to have politics, and not politics as in like which party you belong to, but like a politic as in terms of our values and how we're practicing our values and upholding them consistently in our lives, right? Like we have to find a way to work that in more into our lives. And so it's been really an honor over the past almost year covering like the work that organizations are doing, particularly as we're seeing, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. This has been a wild ride of an election cycle, and I'm just looking forward to seeing more of what people are building and doing. But Georgia has been, I've lived in Georgia for about 6 years now, and just really digging in and seeing the amazing organizing work and resilience and hearing the stories of people's work has been really influential in really helping me ground and figure out like what is our trajectory going forward. So yeah.
So I really want to hear a couple of those stories. If you tell them, I think that's really important for us to hear these personal, very, boots in the ground in the streets of families and people who are voting, parents who are voting, kids who are voting. And I have to say, in your social media, you sometimes post pictures of your kids and what they're doing. They're inspirational, their own selves. It's pretty amazing what you've done in creating this larger community and this familial community, and it speaks to who you are. But I do want to talk about nationally just for another minute, just so I can put in perspective for our community and the people who are watching, because we have a tremendous audience right now, and I want to make sure that they know what this means. So there's a really good chance that control of the Senate is going to be not decided, not only because we're still counting votes, not talking about a couple of days, but Georgia could be the tipping point, which could last until January, like the first or second week in January, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, it's possible. There's some competitive races happening in several other states. There's also, an amazing race being run by Marquita Bradshaw in Tennessee. So there are some seats out there, and folks are paying. I mean, there's a seat in North Carolina, Tennessee. Here you have Mike Epstein's race in Mississippi, and that's a really interesting race too. When you're thinking about like Mississippi, which there hasn't been a Black senator, I think, in Mississippi since like right around Reconstruction, if I'm remembering my history correctly. But also, the current senator from Mississippi, who also got her seat in a special election, that senator, made really racist comments, in terms of like lynching, not directly saying that her opponent should be lynched, but she used very racist, casually racist language. And it's been astonishing to see, how people are unfazed by some of these things, right? And so, Mike Epstein is running the race that he's running in Mississippi. You have, like I mentioned, the two seats here in Georgia. I mean, Doug Jones is up for re-election, I believe, in Alabama. There's quite a few races. I think Montana is another spot that has a Senate race happening. It's several out there. I mean, they're looking to unseat Susan Collins up in Maine. So how that shakes out is going to be really interesting. I mean, and like to put in perspective for folks, part of the reason why, Democrats and progressive liberal organizations have really made it a priority in terms of focusing on Senate races is just looking at all that has not happened with the current Senate formation. I mean, we obviously have seen the Senate rush and to confirm a new Supreme Court justice, despite sitting on necessary COVID-19 pandemic relief for families and communities across the country. I'm sitting on the Voting Rights Advancement Act, the VRA, which was the replacement legislation for the VRA, which had been previously vetted by the Shelby v. Holder case in 2013. We've seen so many things that under Mitch McConnell, the Senate has refused to move on. So folks have really been like pushing in terms of what does it mean to regain the Senate. But I think one of the lessons, more so than just picking up seats, regaining seats, like understanding what it takes to retain and govern, right? And we cannot just leave governance up to those who get elected. Co-governance is something that has to be built into our process. So it's a way that we have accountability, because these people, yes, they're the ones that get elected. Yes, they go into, the Capitol or the state Capitol, but they work for us, right? Like the state Capitol is the people's house. That they are there at the leisure of the people. I mean, they serve at our leisure. So when we don't want them anymore, we can go vote them out, right? But we don't just show up when it's time to vote. Every however many years that the term is, we need to be showing up to the best of our ability during legislative cycles when important bills are being heard. Attica Scott, who's a state representative in Kentucky, is the only Black woman in the Kentucky state legislature. And she's also the author of Breonna's Law, Breonna Taylor, who was murdered by Louisville police. Attica has put forth this whole bill around no-knock warrants and all these other issues to put in place safety measures to protect the community. Attica has been targeted, unfortunately, by local police during protests. And she was one of several who a couple of weeks ago was charged with alleged rioting and all this other stuff, when there's literally, testimony about them peacefully trying to leave sanctuary at a nearby church to, get to where they needed to be at because of the curfew that had been put in place. So there are a lot of obstacles. There are a lot of issues. I mean, I think it's Portsmouth, Virginia, that has also seen the targeting of Black women elected officials because of their policies and politics. So there are things that we need to pay attention to outside of traditional electoral politics in terms of showing up and voting, because there are moments where there are particular entities that are taking action against the folks who we're sending in there as our champions, and we can't leave them alone. To face the wolves by themselves. We all need to go into these spaces right alongside with them. And again, absolutely understand if you're working full time, if you're caring for other people, whether they're children, parents, whoever in your lives, you have fur babies, whatever else it is that's going on, you're working multiple jobs, but we do have to find a way to help lend our voice. So is it that we're leaving messages? One thing that was really interesting, there is a issue happening here in the city of Atlanta around cash bail, and they're trying, or not cash bail, excuse me. There's an issue that has been an issue that has been fought and redone multiple times. But there's an issue happening here around criminal justice issues here in the city of Atlanta, and it was really great that there was an opportunity to provide public comment yesterday evening. On a Sunday evening, there was like a 2 or 3 hour window for folks to call and provide a voicemail to provide public comment. So pushing cities to do accessible, or counties to do accessible things like that, so that people can leave voicemails for public comment periods, so that people can, catch live streams, or that they can email or submit comment in some way. We need to push, our governments, local and federal, to be more accessible to the people, because they are our governments. They work for us. So that's, just what I'm thinking about when we're looking at like the national landscape and where we kind of need to be going. Yes, I know it's been a long, grueling moment through this election period until election day, but we need to save some brain space and brain power for what happens when we're moving forward.
I think especially, no matter what happens tomorrow or in the days or weeks to come, isn't it pivotal that, either way it goes, if we're looking at a brave new direction or a catastrophic cataclysm, either way, we're going to need we're going to need to save some of our voice for that. If it is a new direction, we're going to need to make sure we keep those folks we elected honest and going in the direction that they promised they would, in a way that's going to really benefit the people that got them elected, right? Mm-hmm. So we definitely have to reserve our energy and our spirit and our time and our voices. And I think that's pivotal. One of the things that you said, there was a thread that keeps coming up in what you're saying. And if I'm on the wrong track here, just slap me down, please. I know you will. But it seems to me that the vast majority of time that marginalized folks, people of color, LGBTQI folks, even women, are elected, special elections are a large part of that give them that opportunity. Do you find that? Because I'm hearing that in a lot of what you're saying in the past, and looking at what the special elections we're having now, there's a lot of opportunity for that. Is there something to that? Am I making something of nothing, or is there really something about special elections that allow voices that usually aren't heard to be heard?
So I'm not sure it's necessarily that that's the vehicle in special elections specifically, but however, I do think like when there's a special election happening, usually it's because there's some break in the incumbency, right? Like either someone passed away or resigned from the seat, retired, whatever. And so it does provide an opening in many instances for people to be able to step up and take a seat. Now there are, so it just depends upon also like how a vacancy occurs, whether or not there is a lot of opportunity. You have some instances where the local powers that be will have the chosen person, and that will be, the one. I do think we're also seeing just a surge in candidates who are being really crucial, not crucial, but really connected and engaged with the community, right? They have spent time building trust with the local community. So I think about Nikita Oliver, who is an attorney and organizer in Seattle, and who ran for mayor 2 or 3 years ago, I think a couple years ago. And even though, it's a top 2, so Nikita was almost to the top 2 before a grassroots movement-based candidate. Nikita came very close to being in the top 2 for the runoff. But Nikita really built with community, right? Like there was a whole youth movement behind her in terms of the race that she was running. She was running on very radical progressive politics that would be amazing game changers, would have been amazing game changers for the community. And so we're seeing more of that, right? When people are running in these various races that they're looking at. I think about down here in Athens, Georgia, a county commissioner named Mariah Parker. Mariah is a young person. And Mariah actually went kind of viral because when they were sworn in, Mariah was sworn in on a copy of not the Bible, on the autobiography of Malcolm X, right? And so we're seeing people building capacity, really engaging and working with, a collective of folks. So not just looking people as a base to leverage, but really understanding and building more. So organizations in Minnesota, like Take Action Minnesota, talk a lot about co-governance and what does that mean, building into the work. We've seen the same thing in Hennepin County with County Commissioner Angela Conley, who came out of movement space and became the first, I think it's Black person, not even Black woman, but first Black person to get county commissioner in the over 100 and something year history of Hennepin County, which is where Minneapolis sits. And so we are seeing people building capacity because we are seeing demographic shifts. We are seeing people starting to understand more about what do some of these different races look like and how they impact our lives. When I was working for Democracy for America back in 2018, I was the city's electoral manager. And one of the things when we would do our recruitment for candidates and our endorsement process was really working with my manager to figure out what does it look like to have progressive policy as a city council person, as a county commissioner, as someone who's running for like justice of the peace, and really understanding and drilling down on some of these different positions, but then listening to folks talk about why they want. We had a candidate who wanted to be the justice of the peace in their community because in some areas the justice of the peace is like the first stop in the criminal justice system. So that's where the truancy cases came. That's where kids would enter the school to prison pipeline. So having someone who had certain values as a justice of the peace at that first level could make the world of difference with a young person, with a teenager or child who might otherwise end up down a different track. They had someone who just focused on criminalization versus restoration, right? And so I really think that we do see these different, entry points, but we're also seeing, more organizations that maybe have been more strictly issue-based or movement-based previously, understanding and leveraging the power of electoral politics and how we get more of us. So not just getting candidates to agree to our issues, but how do we get more of the people who are coming out of our organized spaces themselves to run for office? I mean, another example I think is Mandela Barnes, who's the lieutenant governor in Wisconsin. Mandela comes from particular, community space. And, Tony Evers, I think, was very lucky to have Mandela on the ticket, in Wisconsin and flipping those seats at the top of the ticket in Wisconsin. And while they have the entrenched battle they have with the Republican-controlled legislature, it's still been, I think, very powerful to have Mandela, who comes from, the neighborhood that he comes from in the state, and really being able to understand some of the critical issues, because you're talking about some parts of Milwaukee that are heavily incarcerated, zip codes, and have high rates of poverty and things of that nature. And so, like, what does it mean to have people who come from these communities, who understand these issues and struggles, who are actively also then working on those issues in community, right, with those same values, then enter into these elected positions? And I think we're starting to see more of that, and people are feeling like they have someone to support. I mean, I see that even in Reverend Warnock, who's running again for one of the Senate seats here in Georgia. And I say this not because like, oh my God, he's amazing, he has to win, but because I've watched Reverend Warnock over the past couple of years through his work, whether it's through the work that Ebenezer has done. They have a whole social justice. I mean, how can you be the church of Dr. King and not have a social justice ministry, right? And so there's been amazing work. Like last summer, they hosted a interfaith criminal justice reform, criminal justice conference, Let My People Go, and was looking at how we dismantle the criminal justice system. And it was all types of people. So people of faith, whether they came from organized religion or not, people, imams and rabbis and pastors, reverends, etc., like all came together for several days in this conference. And it was really an amazing thing to watch. And there wasn't ego involved, right? So when I'm looking at people who are supporting the Reverend Warnock, for example, they're looking at these examples where they've seen him show up in community in very real ways. He was previously a board director of, or the chairman of the board for the board chair for the New Georgia Project, which is a civic engagement, nonpartisan civic engagement organization that does voting rights work. And so through that, folks have seen him engaging very much so over the past several years on the infrastructure building and development that we're now seeing bear fruit here in Georgia. So we see people who have been leaders in the community who have not followed those traditional political pathways are now stepping in. I mean, we saw this in all the races in New York this summer, right? We were very familiar with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's story, but you have Wandera Jones, you have Jamal Bryant, you have these other folks, not Jamal Bryant, Jamal Bowen, you have these amazing folks who have now come into the space. They've been teachers or social workers, whatever the case may be, who are stepping in to represent the community and have built relationships with the community, right? So when people are going into the voting booth and they're voting for a person, they know that, hey, I'm voting for this person to represent me, but I also know that this person is going to be accountable because we're in community together.
So there's a couple of threads I want to pull at. One, I love what you said about, and this is a great, either a book or a paper, a break in incumbency. I love that. I love that phrase. And I think that is so important because one, on the race level, it's very important, but also I think people's envisioning of what that means, because they're not looking, you're just kind of, oh, this person's been in office and I'm going to keep voting for them because I don't have to think about it. But when there's a break in incumbency, it allows for that greater vision, allows for that larger imagination to finally shine through, right? Mm-hmm. I like that very much. But here's the other thing I'm thinking. With all the lying that has become de rigueur in not only this campaign, but in our country, that has been not only a model of behavior from our administration nationally, but actually encouraged by our administration nationally, right? So the lying is obviously something that is devastating and heartbreaking, and folks like us have trouble understanding how you make your peace with that in the evening. But I think it's also allowed for a truth-telling too. And I'm thinking specifically about, again, Georgia, and I'm thinking about Ossoff talking to Perdue in that debate a couple of days ago. Mm-hmm. And that's a rare moment that shouldn't be rare, and hopefully won't be rare anymore. But I think that the climate has allowed for that. What was it like for you to be watching that and hear him speak in that way, in such a again, it was bold for the moment. It shouldn't be bold. It should just be the norm. And is it going to become the norm now? Have we finally allowed ourselves, as Bayard Rustin himself coined the term, to speak truth to power, to finally say we're emboldened to tell the truth? And if you're a crook, I'm going to call you a crook. I'm not going to be polite. I'm not going to hold back, because it's time for people to hear the truth, to speak the truth, and to be empowered by the truth.
I mean, I really think that's a great point. And when we're looking at what's happening right now, right, like a lot of folks, even just thinking about, like, also going big scale, thinking about the national media grappling with whether or not, or figuring out how they're going to cover Trump prematurely declaring or wrongfully, declaring victory or whatever. And it's just like, you don't, like, it's not a hard thing, right? Like when you have a particular like value proposition, when you're aligned a certain way and you have a BS meter that's built in, and you don't feel like you need to do that political nicety stuff, right? We've seen the politics of decorum literally crumble since the pandemic. And if we weren't sure that it wasn't a thing, we definitely know now, right? And so that moment with Ossoff, breaking, I mean, it's not quite a fourth wall like in movies, but I mean, in some ways it reminded me of that, right? Like when you think about, this was a big thing in 80s movies in particular, when folks would all of a sudden like talk to the camera and, just matter of factly or something like that. And I just feel like that veneer was broken in that moment. because, you know, politicians particularly are taught that you're notified from their consultants or whomever, you're supposed to exist a certain way, you're supposed to stay a certain way, you don't want to offend people. Let's just be real, like where we are right now, we're in a moment where people want straight talk. People want real talk. And people want like folks to tell the truth, to just be clear and stand for what they believe in. Protecting democracy is literally the only side all of us should be on, right? We're thinking about like the parties and what's the right thing to say. There's been too much focus in the past, like even thinking about the Supreme Court confirmation process and all the niceties and like, oh, thank you so much for being here. Oh, let's hug now. And oh, you're so, you know, well-spoken. I mean, there's injustice is at stake, right? People's lives are at stake. We don't have time for all of that. And so, like with what we're seeing, you know, the pandemic and the death toll rising, we're in another round of spiking. Like we don't have time for worrying about people's feelings, right? And being nice in this fake decorum that only goes one way, right? Like I think back to the summertime where AOC was verbally accosted by one of her colleagues on the Capitol stairs, and like there's all this conversation around decorum and respect when you know Representative Rashida Tlaib calls out one of her colleagues during a hearing, I think it was like last year, around something the president had did and called something racist. Like she called it what it was. And it was all this like, oh, you can't say that, that's wrong. You can't call people out. I mean, like there is so much aversion to truth and hiding behind respectability and decorum that is very dangerous for so many of us. And I really do think that we've seen now like the cutting through, like we're even having someone like Jon Ossoff who's been very like poised and coiffed, like really, and proper, so to speak, right? Like really ready, like just like forget about it. Like all bets are off. And like that, I'm not saying we need mudslinging. That's a completely different issue. But we definitely need straight talk. We definitely need people to like take the gloves off and get real. Because we need fighters. We need people who are gonna fight for our communities. We need people who are gonna fight for our families. I'm so much more motivated to vote and support someone who's going to fight for my family, who's going to make sure my kids have what they need to thrive, who's going to fight for me and making sure that with pre-existing health conditions and other issues that I can get the medication and the treatment that I need to like not just live and survive but thrive, right? Like that is what we want. And so like that's what that moment was like, okay, you got some fight in you. Like I mean, like it was all bets were off.
So I think that's where we are, right? So all bets are off. And we've been talking for, you know, the pandemic started 8 months ago. It's not stopping. In fact, as you said, it's worsening. And that was obvious when we had no national structure in place. In fact, there was a dismissal of any sort of structure, in fact. And then we faced finally and thankfully, really as a nation, faced the epidemic of systemic racism, at the beginning of summer, and still, you know, Philadelphia right now and other streets and other cities, and people are still out there. The news doesn't choose to cover it as much or at all anymore, but there's still folks out there having their voices raised and being on the streets and making sure that we're keeping each other safe and our families protected. So along with tomorrow, you know, we either voted or we will vote tomorrow, and we're going to get our friends and our family and our loved ones and everybody out there to vote. After tomorrow, what do we do? How do we make sure that we keep ourselves moving? And we have to take a breath. Well, you know, we can take a day or two, maybe 3, but then we have to come back together and not individually. And it's not about each one of us doing something. It's about what we do together. So and I know this is what you do. This is what you've done for years and years and years. This moment was made for you. This moment was made for you to help us, tell us as a community, how do we move forward together?
I really appreciate that conversation of how we move forward together as a community, right? And I was just writing about this in a recent piece at Essence about the SCOTUS confirmation, but like for me, the SCOTUS confirmation, like I was really trying to sort out my feelings about it when I got asked to write this article. And I turned to a friend of mine, Crystal Good, who actually is one of the people who gave testimony during the confirmation process. And Crystal's in West Virginia. But like I also thought about this book by Mia Birdsong about how we show up. And it's about redefining relationships and community. And I think that what we've been seeing, particularly with the pandemic and the mutual aid and how people are like redefining and reevaluating their relationships to one another, I mean, I think that's part of it, right? Like we need to get real grounded in community, who our community is, who we want our community to be if we don't exactly have the community that we need right now. But like getting grounded with who are the people around us and how do we continue to provide and build collectively together and show support, I think is one thing. The other thing in terms of like the political side of things is like, we do need to breathe, so stay hydrated, you know, eat, rest if you can, take a nap, because it's going to be a long, you know, regardless of what happens. We're going to have court battles. There's going to be a lot going on. But I do think we need going forward is like getting in touch with and in tune with who is doing this type of work, right? Finding, you know, folks will say, find yourself like a movement or organizational home. There are several different organizations, regionally, state-based, all over the place that are doing this type of work. If you live in a community that maybe is a little bit more settled politically, like, you know, solidly progressive, I mean, even still, it's helpful to see what's going on and where is it possible for you to plug in. And I know that capacity, individual capacity, or spoons, as one of my mentors calls it, you know, if you have enough spoons to be able to do more, can be challenging at times. But like, do you have 2 hours a month to help with something, right? Legislative cycle is coming up, so if your state or county level has an organization that does work around budget and policy, about what's proposed coming down the pipeline, you know, kind of just putting in and being aware of what's about to come. You know, I know that here we've had in the past legislative cycle or two, we've had issues around, you know, criminal justice. So whether it's, you know, cash bail, several places have been looking at ending cash bail. We actually had bills last cycle, last legislative session that were trying to attack and undermine, prevent municipalities from passing in cash bail ordinances. We've seen, you know, redefining the gang database to be more expansive so that even my teenage son's skateboard crew could be labeled a gang technically, right? So there are just like so many different things that are like coming out of the pipeline, but like, you know, also figure out, because there's so much, figure out what is your issue, like what is your 1 or 2 issues that you're really passionate about, if you can kind of help provide capacity, because maybe like politics and speaking and policy is your strongest suit, but maybe you're a dope graphic designer and there are local organizations in your area that can use your skills and help a couple hours a month in terms of doing something. I mean, like, there is so much that we can provide capacity and volume. Maybe you're really good with setting up systems and stuff. If someone needs help with operations and doing what they're doing, you can help provide support that way. I'm also not going to tell everyone that you need to volunteer your time and capacity, like, you know, give out free labor. It's definitely valued in one of the ways that we can show our love and support. But, you know, there are some folks who may have budget to compensate that type of expertise as well. So I really think like figuring out who is doing the work where you live, what are the issues that are important to you, and then how can you provide and share capacity. And then also we need to keep an eye on the legislative cycle that's coming up, and not just what Congress is doing, but what are our state and local bodies doing as well. Particularly, I think overlooked bodies tend to be things like, you know, county commissions, water reclamation districts, or however it's framed where you are, public service commissioners, right? Public service commission is on the ballot for us here in Georgia this election. So there are quite a few different things, but we have also this amazing group of young people who have masked up, filled out their ballots. My oldest is one of them, who are coming into the process now for the very first time, right? They either voted for the first time this cycle or in the past, like, you know, whatever election might have happened, whether it's an off election in 2019 or in 2018, but they're here, they're present, they're ready. And so we also need to bring them along with us and recognize that just because they might be younger than us, the age thing doesn't mean they might not have valuable contributions, that they might not have valuable leadership assets to contribute also. I really think the intergenerational organizing, just even the intergenerational dynamic, even in my own household with, I'm an old millennial. I think I'm the first generation millennial, and my daughter is Gen Z. And so, we form, our own little bond on some issues and conversations about what was important on a ballot, for us, and just thinking about what are the issues, because we have different issues politically. So what are the issues that she's interested in, and how can I help her, further, some of the, she's very, not that I don't care, but her passion are in terms of like women's rights and climate justice, environmental justice. Those are like her passions, right? It's how can she become more involved on those specific issues? And so I think that's where we also help, folks get in where they fit in, and then we find our own place, our own lane as well. Oh, the last thing I'll share is share good content, share good verifiable content, right? Like help support building out, the trusted voices in media, because we have so many really amazing folks. I do work right now with Scalawag on the As the South Votes, video series, which is about voter suppression and voting rights. I mean, there's Yes Magazine, there's this amazing platform that we're all talking on right now. I mean, but there's like really great, my former outlet, Prism. There's like so much amazing work that's happening out there. And we need to help lift folks up, because having that distribution network, having that built-in support, and making sure we're sharing really good verifiable information is so critical to having more of that informed engagement long-term.
I am so glad that you gave voice to that. It was one of the topics I really wanted to discuss, but there's so much you and I get into. It's impossible to get it all, but this is an important one, especially freaking tomorrow, right? There's going to be so much misinformation running around without a leash on. We have to make sure that not only do we disavow it, and we name it when you see it, right? If you're on social media, if you're on the phone with a friend, if you was old school, dial it up and, call a friend, whatever it is, use the Pony Express, whatever it may be, wherever you communicate with folks, make sure that you're calling out things that you see that are untrue, that are doing a disservice to all of us by being out there in orbit tomorrow, especially, and then bring the truth, find out what is the truth behind whatever is being spewed, because it's going to happen a lot. It's going to be amplified tomorrow to the nth degree. So we have to keep each other safe in that way. And yes, drink a lot of water. Mm-hmm. My friend, thank you so much for this night. And thank you for all the work you do. I hope, and I know you will come back sometime between now and January, just to tell us what's going on in that in-between time between what happens tomorrow, because tomorrow's not the end of it in any way, shape, or form, and neither is January, but right. At least give us some perspective as we're moving forward, because your voice is so important to be heard, to be amplified, and those of you that do social media, follow Anoa. Chris, our wonderful volunteer, has been in the comment section all night, throwing up the links, especially on Twitter. This is wonderful, and this is Anoa's Twitter right here, The Way with Anoa. Check it out. Really wonderful stuff. And we've lost video. We have a cute little cat, which is adorable. I don't know if Anoa can still hear us, but so I can hear you.
Guys, that it's timed out. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. We love you. It's the perfect time for tech difficulties, because we've had a great conversation. Thank you so much again for sharing community with us, and we look forward to having you back very, very soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
All right, be well, my friend.
All right.
So my friends, beloved community, that is Anoa Changa. Please, if you do social, follow, friend, and like, and do all that stuff. Look at her articles. She mentioned the piece she just did in Essence this week. Please check it out. If you want an authentic voice, someone, Georgia is so pivotal in so many ways in our election tomorrow and moving forward. And she has been on the ground for years and years building community there. So no better voice, and I'm thrilled that she spent this time with us. And as you know, for the rest of the week, we got you covered. We have special election week all week. Tomorrow night, of course, we have queer yoga. We made a conscious decision that we're all going to take a breath tomorrow, both literally and figuratively. So Jasmani will be here to take us all to social justice nirvana together. Be with us after you vote, after you do your good works of the day, before we look to find out whatever returns we may find out tomorrow. Take an hour from 7 to 8 and do some yoga with us and take a breath. And then Wednesday, we're going to have the incredible Adam Gopnik with us, the author of 1,000 Small Sanities. And then on Thursday, we have Jonathan Alter with us. And then Friday, we'll have a great concert with renowned folk artist David Brzezinski. So join us all this week for special election week stuff. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we have Michael Ian Black, we have Patton Oswalt, we have a whole bunch of folks coming at you. So join us every night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. The Social Justice Power Hour is here for you. You are the important part of our community. You being here is an honor and such a tremendous, just being together is so important. So we'll see you again tomorrow night. We'll see you in about 23 hours and 55 minutes. So be well, be good. Take care of each other, please. Take care of your families, chosen or otherwise. And especially tomorrow, take care of yourselves. And if you haven't yet, please vote.
Hey, listen.